Well, that's just prime.
Hello everyone, welcome to That's Just Prime, a Beast Wars podcast. We are back for episode 11, and this time we're discussing the season 1 episode Guerrilla Warfare, which is one of my personal favourites from season 1. I know Ian doesn't mind it, but definitely one of my favourites from season 1. It just hits a lot of spots that we're going to discuss for me, and it's not just Beast Wars, there's a lot of other things that make this episode quite amusing for myself. Anyway, how are you, Ian?
I'm good. Yeah, we've had a great time with things. Episode 11, we're ramping through, aren't we, with toy episodes and guest episodes, and we did a good one last time out, didn't we, with about a mousetrap. That was a fun episode, so good to see that one's gone down well, and nice little feedback and comments we've been getting on that. But we've already done one of my favourites with Power Surge. That was an episode I was really pleased with, and really pleased how that's gone down. Turnaround's fair play. This one's one of yours.
Yeah, definitely. And again, we've had some further good feedback from our interview episode with IDW comic artist Josh Burcham. Again, thanks everyone that have been letting us know that they liked that episode and got that little bit of extra information they may not have heard before. So thank you very much. Let's get into it. So Guerrilla Warfare, we open on the episode with Primal doing a little bit of horticultural research and Dinobot's not too impressed about it, as he feels they're wasting their time, their targets out there for the Predacons, but Primal's trying to explain to him, hey, we can't always be fighting. We need to do what we're actually here for, which is our scientific research and our exploring. It's not our fault we got into a battle halfway through coming here. They're having a look around, essentially looking at the plant life in the area, and Primal finds a plant that's trapped under a rock. Again, Dinobot's not too interested in doing anything to do with this, thinks it's a waste of time, and he says, plants are dumb, we should be learning battle strategies.
I've got like the first opening notes. He's incredibly sarcastic in this. He's really kind of droning it out. Like, Primal says, come on, Dinobot, you're supposed to be having. Oh, of course. He's just really dragging out how much he doesn't want to be there. And he wants battle strategies. And we get a nice little opening line there saying that Maximals are explorers. He signed up for the scientific mission. We get a little insight as to why they're even there in the first place. And yes, they were sent to track down Megatron stealing the golden disc.
Yeah, look, he's definitely got rostered onto the shift and isn't too happy about it, but he's going to persevere regardless. Yeah. Look, Primal finds this plant growing under a rock, and because Dinobot's Dinobot, he decides that he wants to blast the plant out, and halfway through saying his transformation activation, Primal hits the old palm to the face and he stops it. And he said, hold on, there's a more peaceful approach. And he reaches down with his little gorilla foot, which is a bit like a hand, and pulls a little rock out, causing the big boulder to fall. And there he is, the plant's free.
It's not the best edited of the rock falling.
No,
it kind of flicks out a picture, doesn't it? Doesn't exactly tumble away. It just kind of whisks off left screen.
Yeah. Dinobot goes, you can't learn shit from a weed. As he walks away, the weed fires a little spiky seed right into the one spot that Dinobot can't. I say one spot, he's a raptor, he can't reach lots of things, but in the spot that he 100% can't reach, Primal has a good giggle at it.
But look, okay, he fires like the plant fires this kind of spiky seed. I'm going to say it's a he, why not? It goes on the back of Dinobot's raptor neck. He doesn't think to transform, does he?
No, which would have probably just crushed the seed and solved the problem, but maybe his organic mode overrided that function.
Yeah.
Anyway, Primal pulls the seed off. It drops on the ground, splits open, and a new plant, like suddenly. So they've got really good photosynthesis on prehistoric Earth with 2 moons.
No carbon monoxide to kill that atmosphere. It's growing pretty quickly.
We get a great line from Scott McNeil here. From now on, I shoot my dinner salad before I eat it.
That's a great line. I love that.
It's a great start to an episode this. A really fun one. I've always remembered that seed, and it's just as you say, that snarky, sarcastic attitude, and it's just a good start to an episode.
You see that warm element from Primal again. Like he's happy to not fight. Like it's not always about, even though Beast Wars, they're at war. It's it's just like let's learn from the planet. They still don't know where they are, not really.
No.
So they're happy to learn from the surroundings.
He likes to be he's in charge, as we say, but he likes to be the fun uncle, doesn't he? He doesn't always want to be shouting orders. He likes to be the one that sort of guides you in the right direction, but still lets you have a little sip of the wine, like he's that good guy primal. Good guy primal memes coming soon.
But for this episode, we've got, polar opposites, haven't we? And we'll find out as we go on. Yes, but in his first instance, he's very kind of at one with nature.
Now, as Primal and Dinobot turn to head back to base, we assume, they see Scorponok hiding on some random rocks out in the water. Now, the way they've animated this, so we'll get into the details in a second, but the way they've animated this, it looks like it's the ocean because you don't see anything past the foreground. And it's just this random little outcrop of rocks that Scorponok's in. So initially you're like, how do you get there? Why is he hiding in this spot? But you see in a scene later that when it pans out a bit, it's like a lake or something that's there. But initially, you're like, what the hell is he doing? Of some sort.
Yeah. So how does a scorpion get there? They've done better putting Waspinator there. But
so Scorponok...
Give Scorponok a run out.
Scorponok's out in this stupid little outcrop that looks strange. And he fires off a couple of shots, which ends up causing a small little avalanche, pinning Dinobot between a boulder and another rock. With this distraction, Primal heading over, Scorponok says he's got a special cyber bee just for Primal. And with that distraction, he fires it off and he's able to get it lodged onto Primal's chest plate, which at this stage we don't know what's going to happen, but it can't be good.
Just quickly going back to Scorponok's position, I'm sure there's one scene where he's firing just normal rockets from his claws at this point. I think you see like a laser beam of sorts firing from the tail, and there's like one bit of it. Like I thought I did. I might have been wrong, but I looked at it. I thought, did you fire from your scorpion tail? In which case, I think that's the only time I've ever known him to do it.
I'm going to have a look at that. I don't recall if I noticed that or not.
I thought I saw like a red beam coming out over here. I mean, look, it's there, isn't it? In robot mode, it's kind of hanging over, so he could fire.
It wouldn't surprise me.
No, but I've got one thing there. So he fires a cyber bee, which attaches to Primal's chest. One of the few gimmicks from the toys that actually makes it into the show. Because there's so many of the Kenner toys or Hasbro toys that they're just kind of toy gimmicks and they don't get explained. Okay, you see like Primal swords and whatever else, but you don't see Primal's mace or things like that. So you actually see the cyber bee, and it was a good way of introducing a toy gimmick very deliberately into the show. Now, when Primal's under a bit of trouble and Dinobot, I think, wriggles himself free, they fire back at Scorponok because naturally Scorponok might get the job done, but at his expense. There's a scene where you go back to Scorponok and his eyes go from which they're almost constantly yellow to red.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, whether it's emergency mode or something. Throw back to last episode.
Go up to brown alert.
As you say, the toy throwbacks are great because there's three that come to mind straight away. There's this cyber bee, the spider's harpoon weapons, both Black Arachnia and Tarantulas, that spear that fires out. And as you say, Primal swords, very toyetic, all three of them, which is very cool. It's a great thing. But it does rub salt in the wound that I don't have Polar Claw in the episode.
Yeah, I thought I was just going to say there's another one with Polar Claw, isn't it? But there's a lot of toy gimmicks that the toys came with that didn't make it into the show for a number of characters. Yeah. So, you could say Cheetor with his tail gun that makes an appearance, but, it is quite limited by comparison. They didn't have their masks, did they? The mutant masks that they were all supposed to be done with. So let's take it where we can get it. It was a nice use of a very good toys accessory that they wove into the story. I thought that was done well.
So Scorponok cops a blast and falls down the waterfall for his efforts, which we find out is a waterfall.
Yeah, so does he.
Back to the Axelon, the Maximals argue as per usual. Rat-Trap, the voice of reason this time, worrying about Primal. Now, we assume that Primal's in the CR chamber because we sort of get a shot of the chamber with a little bit of light coming out of it, and Primal's nowhere to be seen. Rhinox explains that the bee is a viral mind and it's fused to Primal's core and he can't transform while it's attached. And if they remove it, it will be a quick finish to Primal and probably explode shortly thereafter. So it's big problems for the Maximals.
Now, I'll just go in at that point. There's more to this than the story lets on. He can't transform. I mean, that confines him to base, really, doesn't it? We don't think of it, but he
Very
would
much
short
so,
circuit
yeah.
out with the Energon Surge. So that's not played on. It's because it drives him into a frenzy. This is this whole point. But it's got an added bonus, if you like, and I think it's more by happenstance, that it's going to confine Primal to a robot form. They're protected whilst they're in the bases, but they can't be out in the wilderness, and therefore he can't.
Which is a very good point, because Dinobot says he knows how Scorponok's inventions are, and he believes it's intended to turn Primal into a coward and therefore lead to the Maximal's defeat. Because as you say, and rightly so, he would be stuck at the base, scared and unable to transform, which is the idea. But obviously we're about to find out that I've got news for you, boyo. It's the CR chamber starts getting blasted from the inside, and a pissed off Primal emerges, telling them, do not take this off. No one take it off.
I mean, Gary Chalk does such a good job in this episode, because where we have the very peaceful Primal at the start, very softly spoken and almost laughing and joking, I don't think you hear quite such an aggressive Primal as you do from Gary Chalk as you do in this episode. It's
and we get a return of the swear words here, with threatening to blow their slag and heads off. A return of the slag.
And he really screams it as well, doesn't he? It's like,
very aggressively.
It's really going for it. But I did put a note at this point. We find a bit later on, like, where's Sentinel now? You had Sentinel in the last episode, and now you've got Primal going ape shit in the Axelon, literally. I thought I'd get that in. And he's where's Sentinel? You had him trying to track down a rat. Now
maybe he's turned off. I don't know.
And
maybe
as I
he's
said,
on a reboot.
And as I said with the Facebook post, 100 men versus a gorilla, you're not going to mess with this gorilla, are you?
No, definitely not. We're about to see. Now, big old Rhinox pins Primal. He's a big, strong boy here.
He goes for him, doesn't he? Big muscly boy.
He gets him. And Rhinox says, what happened to turn him into a coward? To which Dinobot says that no doubt the intention, but essentially Scorponok is notoriously incompetent. Yeah, he's a bumbling idiot at that, isn't he?
I mean, he's meant to be like a mad... I never bought into this. Like, he was supposed to be like the Predacon inventor, and that just never worked for me, other than the line from Dinobot. I mean, Tarantulas was the scientist, even though his toy bio said he was a ninja, but whatever. Yeah. But Scorponok was never meant to be...
Tune into episode 4, the 1996 toys.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. Nice plug. With Scorponok just being like the person with 1 day's training access to the tool station, and he's made this, and I just thought, I never buy you as that, but he's supposed to be the mad scientist like Wheeljack was for the Autobots.
Yeah, I don't buy into it. I think he is a self-declared scientist, like he's a self-declared second in command.
Oh, dear, mate. Show me Shipping Gentles.
Anyway, they've got a berserker in their hands, essentially. Primal, in a quick moment of clarity, says he can't fight it, and they need to disarm him of his weapons and lock him up. So while he's got a little bit of wits about him, he's sort of saying, look, I'm going to go nuts soon. You need to sort me out. So back over at the dark side, Scorponok in his little lab, apparently he has a lab now, which is news to us, yeah. Scorponok gets a visit from Megatron, and he brags that he did a good job. Megatron confirms the original intent of the virus and declares that when Primal comes for the antivirus, that it will be a final battle in the Beast Wars. You know, we get the line there.
Yeah, he gets a name plug, doesn't he? But I've got a note there for Scorponok's workstation. Randomly, there's a spare Black Arachnia claw just hanging in the background. And it's not the first time. Like, there's a couple of Easter eggs throughout the entire series.
Yeah, it's probably the animators like, what are we going to put here? Let's just grab something off one of the characters.
Let's go in the edit shelf effects box. So there you go. That's fine. Put that image there. I'm just like, but in lore sense, what are you doing with a piece of black arachnia, mate? What's going on there? Was that
Yeah, a
blown
little bit
off
strange.
from her in Double Jeopardy? What's
Going on here, Scorpy?
I know, right? Yeah.
Flick back once again to a pissed off Primal in the laser cage. Maximal suddenly have a brig in the Axelon. Again, TARDIS technology. There's just rooms coming out everywhere here.
Is this the Maximal torture chamber that we had all the way back in episode 5? I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
It would make sense, wouldn't
it? But look, again, with a little bit of clarity, he sees Cheetor very concerned up there and sort of trying to figure out what to do, and he apologizes to Cheetor, but Primal thinks he can adapt to the situation and maybe use it to their advantage.
I've actually got a note at this point that there's just even more sarcasm coming from Dinobot when they're having the discussion at the round table. There's a lot of sass going on in this episode, but you're right, Cheetor's he idolizes Primal, doesn't he?
Very much.
He thinks he's his hero, so it kind of breaks his heart to see him in this state, and Primal's trying to talk back through this speaker box of I can't control it, but maybe I can point it in the right direction. He's trying to think as long game as he can, and Cheetor's just breaks him to see his hero in such a state.
Yeah, definitely. So Dinobot thinks that we should just point him in the right direction and get him to rip them apart. The others worry that Primal will get trashed in the process, which is fair enough. But at this point, Cheetor and Primal emerge, and the rest of the Maximals are freaking out because Primal's standing there free. But Primal confirms that he likes the plan, and that's what they should do. And then suddenly he starts going off again because he's not in control. He's in berserker mode. He starts firing into the command room, which then sets off the alarm system.
He hears an alarm. He's got no trigger whatsoever, and he's just angry. He's shut it off. And now his weapons that should be disengaged, by the way, and all of a sudden his arm cannon's out.
Correct. Yeah, they were meant to disarm him before, but maybe they forgot about the arm gimmick there. So he starts firing all around the command room there. The Maximals all hiding. Big Rhinox goes again to take down Primal, but this time not so much luck. And Primal goes full berserker mode, swords out, cannons out, and he heads out of the base quickly to head to the Preds.
Face mask down as well. I've put here every weapon bar the mace. I mean, if this would have been a good time to bring the mace out for the toy gimmick, that this is the time to do it. It's I've got everything at my disposal. But yeah, he basically releases himself, discharges himself, and off he goes, jetting off to the dark side.
Again, with all weapons on board, so they obviously didn't get to that very quickly, unless we assume that Cheetor let him access them on the way back to the command room or something. Possibly. Not very smart by the team there. So Dinobot puts his thinking cap on here and tells Cheetor that they can't rush after him. They need to strategize and figure out what Primal would normally do and negotiate, which is a bit of an odd one for Dinobot, but at least he's trying to think in the situation.
I think that it shows now the characters are fleshed out, because we said Dinobot's very impatient in the first few episodes when he joins. He's very, very much a Predacon in that sense, and now he's thinking, no, we should negotiate. And even a couple of the Maximals are a bit well, that's not very you. But isn't this a bit of a fun time for Dinobot to be calling the shots? And even the previous episode with Sentinel, Rhinox was calling the shot. Rat Trap's second in command, and he doesn't have that much input in this. Dinobot seems to be taking
It's a bit of a revolving door with the command situation in the Maximal base sometimes. Now, it must be Tuesday because it's communications roulette time. This time we've got good comms. The Preds receive a tight beam transmission, whatever that is, from the Maximals. And it's Cheetor on the other end of the line, and he informs that they've gone fucked up and they should fork over the antivirus before it's too late. But Megatron doesn't like this plan very much and says, "No, bugger off," turns the comms off and boots Scorponok in the face for being an idiot.
The best line in this from Megatron, from David Kay, of course, is just how he answers the phone to Cheetor. Go, "Oh, pussycat, yes." It's very Sean Connery in this one.
Yeah, but he's not too happy with Scorponok messing up the plan here and gives him a
made him a coward.
20
actually made him a berserker.
Barney boot to the face. Yeah.
Just quickly, I just want to go back to communication. I left a line out. So when Cheetor's talking to Megatron, he's got the line there because I want to link it to the Toy Mage toy. Well, I'll probably just do that now. under communication from Cheetor to Megatron, how Megatron's not really happy with the proposal of negotiating and putting his defenses up. Comes out with the line of, any Maximal who tries to enter the base will not survive. Megatron out. Incompetent bug. And then that's when he kicks Scorponok in the face. That line is actually stored in the KO of the Masterpiece, the Toy Mage version with David Kay's voice clip. It's one of the clips that they actually played. And I remember hearing that line watching the episode back, thinking, oh yeah, I've got the toy on the shelf that actually says that exact line.
I've never put batteries in mine, so I should check
really?
that out.
Oh, I think mine actually came with batteries. But yeah, it's got like Japanese version. If you hold it down, it turns into the English version. There's a typical Megatron terrorized, but that exact line on the communication of this episode of all episode is
what
on the
random
KO
line to put into the toy.
It is a bit, isn't it? Of all the lines you could put in there.
No, that's a nice little factoid for your listeners and myself.
There you are. Don't say I don't bring the entertainment.
That's right. Now, back to the battle mask you mentioned before. Primal reaches the dark side and he's flying in, and we get a nice shot of his face where it goes from the slit with the mouth in it to the battle mask forming over the top. And he blasts the side of the dark side and then just flies in a rate of knots straight into the hull. Very nice.
Oh, yeah. They again, this is where I don't think we see the dark side's defense. Apparently, there were supposed to be things that shoots maximal energy signatures. Clearly not. And even if they did, it probably wouldn't stop him. He's all guns blazing, takes a few good hits at the hull, and he's inside the base.
Yeah. Now, this last sort of few minutes, maybe 10 minutes of the episode is where I really like it. There's a lot of action movie, 80s, 90s movie tropes put in here, particularly from a couple of films, which we'll go through as in sort of order of operations here. So, first of all, Tarantulas is up. And he sneaks up on Primal in a hallway that we assume that he's just entered. And he thinks he's got Primal from behind. He fires his harpoon that we spoke about before, that very toyetic harpoon, at Primal. And Primal catches it very easily, very nasty, and then pulls the full T-1000 finger waggle. Like, no.
He's not happy. The eyes really arched down.
Yep. Yeah, he pulls the T-1000, and in the very same Terminator vein, as Tarantula starts firing his machine gun spider legs, Primal just steadily walks towards him, just copping shots, like little bits of damage appearing all over him. Doesn't phase him, doesn't blink an eye. All of a sudden, grabs Tarantulas, flicks him against the wall, and then pins him to the wall with his own harpoon.
Impales him. Oh, God. It's, again, Tarantulas, who quite happily gets dislimbed and everything else, now gets impaled by his own harpoon and somehow doesn't die. But, yeah, it's Tarantulas cops a bit of a beating here. I mean, it was a bit silly, wasn't it, to just send Tarantulas after a ward. Especially
knowing that he's berserking and not being a coward, you know.
Yeah, what did Megatron think was going to happen?
Well, funny enough, Black Arachne announces that the other Maximals are inbound, and Megs tells her and Pterosaur to defend the perimeter, which they happily do, because I'm sure they don't want to be in the base right now.
Away from him.
Then orders poor old Waspinator to take on Primal, which Waspinator, like the dumb sack of hammers he is, decides that he's going to succeed.
Not
on a normal day,
missing
mate.
In this situation, mate.
Yeah, not on a normal day, let alone today. You're a bit of a dimwit for this battle, I think. Anyway, so Waspinator, all confident for a moment, heads down another hallway and then starts freaking out, and he pins himself against a wall. Now, this is the next action movie trope, which is one of my favourite films. You hear the thumping footsteps of Primal, but he's nowhere to be seen. And then suddenly a fist straight through the wall, rips Waspinator through the wall. It's just that scene from RoboCop, the first 1987 RoboCop, in the office building when he rips the guy through the wall. I thought, that's brilliant.
Yeah. That's good. Poor Waspinator then gets a shot in the face for his trouble.
But yeah, look, I love this episode, and obviously there's a little bit left to go, but just having these 80s, 90s movie action bits, it just really fits this berserker character of Primal. But yes, poor Waspinator cops a shot to the face for his efforts. He's never on the winning side, old Waspinator.
For those keeping score at home, what are we up to now? Got to be in the 70s.
At least it wasn't Rhinox's twin guns this time. time.
Oh, yeah.
Now we get a gunfight between the bots outside. Primal hears Cheetor in his mind as the real Cheetor heads into the base at Rhinox's command. So they obviously got a plan here, which we assume, and we'll find out later, to get the antivirus.
They're working on this on a whim, aren't they? That actually is an antivirus. And you can look at this a couple of ways. One, why would there be an antivirus? But like any bomb maker or anything like that, there's an antidote. There's an escape route of some button. Even the dumb Scorponok's done that. I guess this is maybe Dinobot's intel to Rhinox and then Cheetor that there will be an antivirus. It will be deep within the dark side. Cheetor's our best chance of running through to going to get it, particularly if we can flush them out.
Yeah, like you say, it's like, why is there an antivirus? You don't want him to get it. Why? You're not assuming that anyone else is going to get the cyber beast stuck to them. So why do you make it? You just tell them that you've got it. The result will be the same. But anyway, they've got one. So next we see Primal entering Scorponok's lab where the antivirus is nowhere to be seen, it seems. And Megatron appears out of the darkness with the antivirus in his stumpy little purple hand and says that guerrilla warfare suits Primal. Once again, we get that nice little episode title in a line drop somewhere there. Yeah, they like to do it. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't see Megatron in anything other than his T-Rex mode at this point, which, I don't know. I would have thought if you're allowed to be in your robot modes in base, then you would be most of the time. But he's walking around in his T-Rex mode with his little stumpy hand, as you say, stumpy hand for T-Rex. Kind of with the antidote in hand, so he's gloating a bit.
It does look a bit ridiculous, this T-Rex walking around with things in his hands. But he also says the old Primal would have never made it this far, implying that the only reason you're here is because that Cyber Bee's on your chest.
Optimus effectively calls Megatron's bluff and says, well, what do you want? And Megatron says, I want your allegiance. I want you to bow to me, and then I will give you the antivirus. Now, he can kneel at this point, Primal. He can say, fine, I yield. I will, a bit like Rat Trap did a few episodes earlier, just say it. Doesn't have to mean it. He needs the antidote. He needs it soon because he's deteriorating, and he's still showing the battle damage from his fight with Tarantulas. Fight's a strong word, but, damage nevertheless.
Fight's a strong word, yeah.
But then he could have just said to Megatron, fine, I yield, and I'll stop my forces, get the antidote, and then change his mind. But maybe Megatron would have had a backup plan to that, as he is the chess player. Who knows? But Megatron, or rather Optimus, goes a step further and says, well, no, I'm not going to play your game. I'll never yield. And he rips off the Cyber Bee.
Yeah. So he essentially says, fuck you, Megatron, rips the Cyber Bee clean off his chest. And with his early botanical education, he throws the Cyber Bee onto a fleeing Megatron's back, right where he can't reach, of course, right between the shoulder blades. Megatron keeps running,
mate.
screaming for Scorponok. Scorponok! He's got that. He's not happy. The poor idiot's going to cop it once again.
Yeah.
So with Megatron fleeing, the antivirus has been sent flying into the air, and with timing of a Cheetor arrives in the nick of time to catch the antivirus midair and administer it to Primal, whose spark is rapidly fading. Primal looking a bit worse for wear, and Cheetor bail before the bomb goes off. So after we see Primal and Cheetor make a run for it, we flick back over to Megatron and Scorponok standing there with the bee between them, which blows up in their faces. We don't see what happens to them, but we can't imagine it was very good.
Yeah, it's another explosion inside and in your face, and yet we don't know, does this kill them? No one's gone to check on Tarantulas either, so is it just a case of it's I don't know, like a science experiment blowing up in your face and you're covered in black soot? Who knows? But
there's going to be a line at the old CR hot tubs in the dark side this week.
Yeah, just a bit. But you get the line back to Cheetor. He's jabbed the antivirus or the antidote into Primal's chest, which he just kind of hopes works. Otherwise, he's just impaled him as well. It's a rather long needle, to which Primal does kind of almost instantly recover. He's back to normal, and you get the line from Cheetor, which I'm sure we've heard before, time to fade, heroes.
So back over at the Axelon in our sort of closing scenes of the episode, we find Dinobot at a waking Primal's side. So going back to the Axelon, we get another room here, which is Primal's quarters, we assume. It's got a nice window of the outside. Looks nice. It's not so run down like the rest of the ship. I guess captain's privilege. But yeah, look, Primal ribs him about it fairly quickly, and Dinobot says, "Oh, well, it was my shift." You know, like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like he doesn't want to admit to the fact that he's probably been sitting there since Primal came back. But look, he leaves, and you see a little gift left behind by, we assume, Dinobot, a little potted plant. So Dinobot's got a little bit of sweetness to him without letting anyone know, but Primal knows.
Well, this is where it's kind of, I think this scene really shows the evolution. The whole episode, you see a different side of Dinobot. We got the sarcasm, and then it's a case of, well, I'll be a negotiator. It's not what Primal would want. Earlier in the episode, we didn't cover it, but he says to Cheetor, what would Optimus do? The old Optimus do. This isn't sort of a bloodthirsty warrior that we've seen. And right at the very end, as you say, this is my shift. If it is good to have you back, to which Primal says, well, back here or back to normal? Yeah. Dinobot sort of looks over his shoulder and says both, and gives a wry smile. Probably the only time he really smiles, in at least a genuine happiness look. And as you see, the plant that we assume Dinobot went out and picked for Primal, showing a side of compassion. But there was always this healthy respect between Dinobot and Primal. Of all of the Maximals, the two did respect each other, and Dinobot was worried for his commander.
So overall, the episode was a pretty fun one. I love, again, those action movie tropes there. A little bit of Terminator, a little bit of RoboCop thrown in there. Very cool. Makes it fun. Obviously, the writers like that stuff. They like their action movie things that they throw in every now and then. And just a general good, like, story-driven episode. There was purpose to it. Like, something happened at the start. We had our middle bit. We had our end. It was a well-structured episode. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, as you talk around the films of the time and of the age, it's very much what goes into it. I'm not sure who produced this episode particularly, but whereas in the previous episode, it was very much, you had the raw guitar, the sound bites, even the comical effects where the little spiders came across the screen. But now you had more softer undertones, didn't you? And you got more nature shots.
Yeah, you get a little bit of a softer intro, more pleasant, a little bit of joking around, and it slowly ramps up into that action across the episode. So we get a nice varied type of story here where we get a nice bit of education from Primal to Dinobot at the start, and then we get that big action sequence at the end. So a nice overall ramp up through the episode.
Yeah, I mean, you really do see a range from Gary Chalk here, which he's often said Primal is just his voice with a bit more oomph. And you get that softer and even, very relaxed nature at the end of it. But when he's really aggressive, when the bee's first on his chest, he's very angry. And then he's tired when he's fighting and talking with Megatron when his spark's low. So, yeah, there's a good range from it. It's very much a good Primal episode, seeing what could be. And it's an episode theme, if you like, about, or not quite shattered glass, but, what would a polar opposite be? We see it with another character, don't we, coming up in a few episodes of what could happen if they're a little bit more unhinged. But the episode as a whole is really a good episode. Lovely undertones. I love that first scene. I know this is very much one of your favorites, Chris, but watching it back, I forgot how good an episode it was. It's definitely a recommend from me as a good standalone episode.
Yeah, and I love that there's toyetic things in this episode. You get to see a lot of the weapons from Primal that are in the toy, which is an absolutely fantastic toy. Again, go back to our 4th episode. We talk about the 1996 toys there, and that Primal is absolutely a must-own Transformer in general, not only a Beast Wars figure, but just in general, if you're into Transformers, pick up Primal. But this episode, you see everything bar the mace, as you said earlier. We also get to see the Cyber Bee. Now, I just reviewed a figure that came with a really accurate Cyber Bee that can work with the Masterpiece Optimus Primal, which is quite fun. So there's a lot in this episode from the toy side and the entertainment side, which really come together. And it just, as you say, you sort of forget how good of an episode it is.
Yeah, it's kind of sandwiched with a few good episodes at this point. It's not a spotlight episode as such, because Primal is very much a mainstay character. You also get every Predacon in this episode, which is pretty good. You see him in one form or another. The only character you don't see is Tigatron, but you see everyone else on screen for at least at one point or another. But I think it's a good flex. There's a lot in it for, it's I wouldn't even say it's a filler episode. It's just a good. You can imagine they're cooking up a plan to kind of take Primal down a peg. What started off as very much a scientific exercise out in the wilderness turned into be a big attack on the Predacon base.
It also shows that they learn from other things, that, they are scientists, and Primal learnt from a plant at the start of the episode, which came in handy at the end of the episode. So it shows the growth in the characters. Not that he needs any particular growth, but it is nice that he can learn from these new organisms that he's discovering on this planet, well, at least for the first time for the Maximals, and he can make use of that knowledge.
Well, that's giving the kind of the nature side, the organic side of Beast Wars, isn't it? They're on a planet that's not Cybertronian, not metallic. They are very much on a world that doesn't abide by their rules, can't be made. There is Mother Nature or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And they are learning from that. He says at the start, see, we've learned something and it can be an advantage in itself. And that undertone for me is one of the best reasons why I like Beast Wars. It's in a setting that you didn't get that. You kind of always felt that in the G1 cartoon, and I'm by no means hating on G1 at all, but you always felt that Earth was just the setting and the Transformers were the highly advanced race, therefore you want to know more about them than you do about Earth. Where in Beast Wars, it was very much the other way around. They had to adapt their bodies to suit the climate. They had to adapt their style to the surroundings. And then things like the Standing Stones, it wasn't so much that the Transformers were the main story so much, it was the ever-changing environment that they crashed on.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, unlike G1 where, okay, they have alternate modes to hide, it's robots in disguise, we get that. But really outside of that disguise, okay, you're a truck or a car, you drive on the road or on the dirt, you're a plane, you fly. But guess what? The tape deck and the gun can fly too, so it's not like a special power. But in Beast Wars, they're beast modes come into play a lot, where they may need to fly or they need to be stealthy or they need to be fast, or the energon's there, so they need to transform and survive. So that organic part of it and their beast modes come into it often, which is fantastic. You're not, like I said, we're not hating on G1. The G1's why we're here, but the transformations in G1 were just sort of part of the gimmick of the toy line, you know what I mean?
No, it absolutely was. I mean, this is what I've said, particularly by the time it got to like G1.5 and G2, it was a case of how big and how threatening could you be? Like some of the G1.5 stuff was just obscene turrets. And don't get me wrong, they look cool. They were great toys, but I've said this countless times. I'll say it one more. To transform in Beast Wars, they needed to survive. They needed to avoid the energon buildup. And then as such, they had their byproducts of their beast mode that would come in handy, like Rat Trap going through a vent. Primal's certainly not going to do that. So there's things that they really did etch out what their alt modes could do in the show rather than hiding in plain sight.
And even later on in like season 2, Transmetals was the next toy gimmick. The show made use of their new vehicle modes, quote unquote vehicle modes. But even things like Quick Strike, which we'll get to in more detail later on, obviously. But he was part Cobra. Well, cobras have venom, and he uses that in his fighting and, to incapacitate other bots and stuff. So they use the advantages of their base modes often, it's a real difference to a lot of other Transformers media, but a very good one at that. Again, a brilliant episode. That was episode 10 of the series, Guerrilla Warfare, and this is episode 11 of That's Just Prime.
We've gone off number sequence. That's going to trip us up.
Well, it's going to get worse from here, so that's all good. In fact, it's probably easier the further they spread apart. But anyway, we couldn't keep the numbering equal forever. Once again, a good episode. Had a really good chat about that. Enjoyable episode in general. We've got plenty to come in this season. We're all of about halfway through now, so we're getting up into the guts of it now, and we're going to have some big plot-driven episodes coming up soon, which is really cool. We're going to put the call out for more listener questions, so please hit us up on our social medias. We've got a couple at the moment, but we want to make a bit of a thing of it in the episodes, so we want to bank a few up and get a good chunk of them done. So please hit us up on our Twitter or Instagram or Blue Sky or Facebook, or if you can't find those for some reason, send it to our personal social medias. That's fine. We'll make a note of it and get it into the next episode for you.
Yeah, the questions are great fun to answer and really good to get an engagement as to what your thinking is, and you find out a lot about people's preferences for Beast Wars, whether they like the Transmetals, the toys, the cartoon, the comics. So it's great to have that kind of variety of feedback from you all and the questions that you want us to cover on the podcast, and obviously give you a shout out in the process. So as Chris says, do get your questions in to wherever you can reach us.
Definitely. And obviously you can reach us on our personal social medias. I am Chris Carnage _ on Instagram and Twitter. I'm Chris Carnage at Blue Sky blah 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 thing on Blue Sky. Carnage Creations on YouTube. And Ian, where can they find you, my friend?
You will find me mostly on YouTube. You'll also find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky. I think I'm on Threads and Reddit to boot. But yeah, I'm more or less anywhere. And as Chris says, if you just want to contact us, you can find us on the podcast at those various of addresses and platforms.
Definitely. Now, I, in the background, have been working on some little merch things, still work in progress, but we will announce when we've got things available, probably through Redbubble. I'm just having a chat to a couple of artists about some things, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. That's exciting when it comes. We won't be charging much for things. It will be very much just a show of support to the podcast. We're not in it to make profit, but obviously you have to pay for the goods, so any merchandise, we'll keep it as cheap as absolutely possible. But we want some ourselves, so...
Yeah, no, it's going to be good fun, isn't it? And yeah, no, that'd be cool for anyone who wants to show their support towards the podcast. And we have engaged with fans, so yeah, that's going to be a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, once again, this is episode 11 of That's Just Prime, a Beast Wars podcast, and we've covered guerrilla warfare, and we will see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's just prime.
Nice.